What's going on? It's your boy DameSmiff, and we're gonna have a quick conversation about why are there so many scammers in Paris. And so the biggest thing I wanted to take away from this is that Paris is widely known for its fine arts and its history and things like that. So what attracts people to want to use this location as a prime real estate for scamming and things like that? So if you like content like this, make sure you hit the like button and also subscribe so that way you can catch my latest videos and uploads. So the main thing I want to get into with this is the perspective of this scamming, I guess you can say, problem Paris is having from the perspective of an artist and why it's important to pay attention to, especially as an artist. So essentially, when I see scamming and things like that, because it's in most major cities here in my country, when I see it, it usually is a sign of, personally, I think it's a lack of ingenuity and creativity, meaning the community that's doing it, they can't really get their hands on what to create or what problem to solve. So they're kind of relying on just the numbers game of the law of averages, simply. And you can kind of make a living out of it, but you still have to be smart to do it, right? So the key thing to understand here is that in order for you to be a successful scammer, like we will see when I react to this following video, you will notice that there's a big piece here that they have to maintain, and that's structure. And there's also organization that they have to maintain. So that's important to remember and keep in your mind as an artist, because there's things that you're kind of up against when you're creating as an artist. So let's say, for example, you create something like in Paris, the Eiffel Tower, and it's something so amazing and immense that you give it to a country. It can be bootlegged, scammed to almost, no value, and almost treated as if it means nothing to a larger community simply because of the culture that it's surrounded by. So we're going to take a look into how Paris is handling it and a little bit into how the locals may feel. And I want to kind of give an example of what you could possibly run into with a culture like this and how it may affect you as a musician or artist. So let's get into it. So we have a very popular YouTuber I'm going to react to, and this is Oliveira, and he's known for like being in Paris dealing with the scammers and things like that, but we want to use this as a bit of a window to look into what's really going on. So let's take a peek.
We're good. Hey, we have a peace treaty today. We're focused on them, all right?
Le pass.
We're focused on them. We move it in the past. I forgive you. You know, no, I don't. Actually, no, I don't.
If you come near me,
I don't forgive him. He's already aggro. He's already fucking aggro again. What the fuck? We have peace. We're moving. We're moving. Oh my God, this is the guy we met the first video right here. This is the first one who swung at us. 10 minutes in, we're gonna walk though, because we're gonna lose our footage. We're gonna engage in a peace treaty with them, because we don't have time to fight them. There's too many enemies out here right now. We're gonna tactically retreat to the rest of our crew. Fred, why are you concerned? They're starting to form lines around here. This is where Pasha got jumped in the night. Just to give you a per view of the whole scene. Okay. Why are they so spooked? We're getting stared at. Peace. Peace treaty. All right, they want to fight. They love the blood.
One of the guys was like, that's Pasha.
Oh.
For 100%.
Yeah, we gotta watch our six.
That second bridge over there, there's like at least 40 people as well.
They want us dead. It's time to walk. I think we just get a taxi and walk on out of here.
They're filming us right now, right there.
We don't want to fight truly, but it might come to that.
let's get an Uber and go, because no matter where we go, they're going to be fucking multiple of them. Let's get an Uber and go.
Hey, this is the guy who was foaming at the mouth. This is the guy foaming at the mouth last time. I remember you, my friend. My friend. Almost itching to tweak at me. He was going, da, 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 da. We're in enemy territory out here. We're getting the nastiest of looks over there. Look at him, look at him, look at him, look at him. We're definitely gonna get jumped 1v100. They run the streets, look at them. They're like, come down. We've learned from our mistakes. We are wizened and seasoned fighters.
So as you can see, there's clearly a whole lot of people that are allegedly scamming in Paris. Now, if you've never heard of this and you don't know what's going on, essentially they do most street scams that you've seen for probably hundreds of years now, where it's like the ball and cup scam. You do something for free and now I'm gonna hassle you for like money, or there's plenty of street scams. You can just Google them. But apparently they've been doing this for so long that the local civilians have just become numb to it. It's kind of like just par for the course. They don't really acknowledge it, and it's something that has become so prevalent in their environment that they allow it to happen and treat it as a trap for specifically tourists. So if you fall victim to it, you kind of had it coming in a sense. That's how they view it over there.
Oh, they're all the way over there. Look at them. Look at them. They love it. They love it. There are so many of them. I don't know where they come from. There's an infinite supply of them.
And as you can see, they have little stations set up. It's just like New York City over here. It's no different.
They recognize. I mean, look. How you doing, my friends? We're definitely in enemy territory.
They're gonna fucking do some shit.
How you doing? How you doing? We have peace treaty. Actually, no. Fuck off you. Fuck off you. Fuck you. Him over there. I remember his face. Truly, just a lot of familiar faces. We're good. We're good. Hey, I remember you. Peace. Peace. Peace treaty. Peace treaty. We're good.
Now, the only reason this is a big deal and supposed to be a big deal is that if you pay close attention, if you reject the scam itself, that's a threat to you, right? Because you're not dealing with a business. You're not dealing with somebody who's giving you the option to buy something. You're kind of offered something, and if you don't deal with it, you're kind of hindering the whole purpose of them being outside for the day, thus wasting their time. So you almost have to, which I was mentioning earlier, just like the locals, completely avoid the scammers, right? But the issue with that, when it comes to this kind of like just turning a blind eye to the scammers, is that you leave a lot of people who are uneducated or misinformed to be victims, which is who they are actually looking for. You kind of just, it's kind of like you're the one sheep that realized there's a cliff at the end that people are running over, and you just stop and walk away and watch everyone else die, right? So there's a principle behind that, right? So there is a bit of duty that I guess Tyler feels here to kind of correct this wrong that's being done to honestly innocent people, right? But why would you feel that way about people being scammed? Why would you turn a blind eye to something like that? Now, this is a conversation that is important for artists because a lot of artists want their art to be accepted by the wider public or the general public. And when they do wind up getting their stuff bootlegged, stolen, or scammed out of, let's say, a contract or things like that, there is a conversation about whether or not there was some kind of duty to protect them as artists or even as citizens, right? But this goes beyond how we personally feel, as we can see here in Paris, which is supposed to be one of the, pillars of fine art on planet Earth. But if the locals are this, I guess you can say, numb to something as simple as street scamming, then we can only imagine how the locals feel about the higher and finer arts in their area.
Okay, we move on. We've established peace. We don't want any trouble. I just want to establish they're still here. We cannot fight them or defeat them. We're good. How you doing? Okay, we may get jumped.
I know.
We may get jumped.
Let's go into. We're going.
Taxi right
We're
here,
going.
let's go. Hundreds of them out here. There are more and more and more. They're looking at us like they want to eat us, like we're a tasty meal. We want peace. The problem is, no matter how good you are fighting, look, the taxi dipped with no one in it. We're fucked. We're fucked.
Jack, what are you doing? What are you fucking doing going this way? Fucking joking, mate.
I was gonna get the taxi.
Joking. No, we're not.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Are you stressed?
Yeah.
Because there's so many.
Of course.
There's so many.
Of course.
Okay, that's the thing. There are far more than I remember. Yeah. There are infinite. We're famous out here with them specifically.
It's almost like he's not ready for a fist fight. But that's kind of the key problem with these scammers, is because if you allow them to kind of like set their footing, violence is probably the only tool that you have as a defense. And when you're dealing with, 19-year-old women who want to go on college tours to Paris, or 60-year-old couples that want to go travel together because they're finally leaving their nest, violence is not a tool that's going to work with these kinds of options, right? And so they're kind of winning in that instance. That's why you're supposed to have the police. The police are meant to do something here, right? So let's see how the locals feel about dealing with this, because they're the ones that will have to deal with it before the police anyway.
See this? Now, you're scammers. Police are coming. What is this? You're not deaf. You can hear, yeah? You can hear this? You hear me yell at you, you run like a little rat. Now you smell like shit.
He's spraying them with fart spray. Oh no. Now you gotta walk around stinky.
Woman, please, silence. Silence. She hides behind a woman. She's lying about being deaf.
So, okay, this is actually very interesting. So apparently this woman here is defending the fart sprayed scamming woman I'm not sure why though. I don't know why she's defending her. It's as if she doesn't know she's scamming, or maybe, like I said earlier, she's just kind of numb to the scamming and just doesn't want the scamming to stop. Now, the reason I'm pointing that out is because we did another video talking about, I believe it was Chicago gun violence, and one of the victims of the gun violence literally said, "I don't want the gun violence to end." So something similar may be happening here with this woman with the scamming that's going on in her own neighborhood.
You are a woman, are you not? What are you? Are you fucking kidding me? Do you have a pussy or not? Oh my God. Look at this. They tore it up. There's their pen. You're a scammer. She's lying about being mute and deaf. You're my problem. Collecting money from people acting deaf and blind, this is illegal. And as I walked away with the torn up fake charity petition in hand, of course, a black knight came to save the day and protect
A black
the
knight.
from our justice.
Enlève.
You don't know the situation. Be
Elle a
quiet.
volé, ok.
Who are you?
Elle a... Oh, il y a mon image là.
I see you, I see you, I see you.
Donnez mon
You see
sien
me?
vraiment.
You said I baby.
Okay, now I'm more confused about this man, because the other woman could have been like trying to just de-escalate, you know, the emotionalism in, or the emotions of the problem at the time. This guy seemed like he's seen people talking from down the street and then walked over here. I don't understand what's going on with his, what does he have to do today?
He swung at my cameraman. Who are you? You don't
Tell the police.
He smacked that?
Ah, fuck you, man.
What the fuck? And then he went to pull out what we thought might have been a knife. Relax.
Fuck you, man. Fuck me. It's girl.
Who are you?
Okay.
Oh, you man. The scammers? He can
I don't
Turns out
understand.
It was his dick. Nonetheless, the bodyguard felt our lives were being threatened and used proportional force to neutralize.
So just sudden perversion just out of nowhere. He saw that as an opportunity to be creepy. I don't know if he's a local now.
Threat. Do you hate the scammers?
Of course, everybody hate them.
Do the locals hate the scammers?
Of course,
Do the tourists hate the scammers?
of course.
Do the police lock them up?
No, not really, because they are too much.
Too many.
Where do they live?
We don't know. Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
We're going to make
So he says the police don't lock up the scammers because there's too many. Now that tells me what I said earlier. There's a bit of organization going on, because if you've ever seen like some kind of like war film or anything like that, you would know that you got to be kind of strategic if you want to win it, right? And so if the scammers, by what we can see in this one video, are winning the war, then that would lead me to believe that they have some kind of strategy that's in play. Now, it could be just get as many scammers on the street as possible so they can't catch us all. Or it could be some kind of network that's being utilized so that way the police, for some reason, feel as if they can't do anything about their own citizens.
sure they go home, wherever it is.
Okay. have a
Merci
good
beaucoup.
day.
Au revoir. Shut the fuck up. Thank you. He said good job, my man. Shut up. I'm cleaning up your problem.
That's very interesting. She said, "We're not the USA," which means in this context that she would like to keep the scammers in her neighborhood, because in her opinion here, in this context, there are very few scammers, if not any scammers in the US, and she doesn't want that. She wants the scammers to stay here. I don't understand. Now, there is another perspective that I could possibly assume she's trying to do, and which is some people are so, I guess you can say, meek and soft-minded, where confrontation is almost never an option for them. Like, you could see someone getting into a fist fight with a toddler and you would not intervene simply because intervening would mean effort. You would have to do something, right? So she could be one of those citizens where she just doesn't want to hear the noise of change and justice, or the confrontation of differing opinions and perspectives. But it was interesting for her to point out his country to identify that, which is not the context of what they're talking about. He's simply trying to get what he thinks is a scammer off the street. He's not trying to impose any kind of like cultural change.
Some scammers. I fart sprayed them, and then some guy tried to get in the middle and he got kicked. Yes, thank you so much. Good man.
A lot of the people around here do appreciate what he's doing. Like, I don't know if he's just not showing all of it, but you can see you can see differing opinions coming from the locals. Now, again, this is just scamming, right? This is just like, I want to sell you something and get like $10, $20 out your pocket. But just imagine if you went to Paris and you wanted to sell a product, you wanted to, you know, be on the street busking and things like that. There's a bit of deference in how they're going to view what you're doing and the value they place on your art. Because you can say some of the scammers here, they are handcrafting whatever product they're making and trying to sell it, even though it represents somebody else's culture. It is some form of art that they may be doing, right? But the value that they're projecting on it is literally a scam, which only leads the audience or the locals to have to justify the value, which means, okay, if you think it's worth keeping this guy here, then pay him what he's worth. If you don't think he's worth being here, then why do you keep him here, right? And so this is important to understand for artists, because you're going to try to tour in these places. You're going to try to convince even people in your own city to come see your shows. And some of them will think they're getting scammed. And so if you can't justify it, which means provide value, then you may want to change what you're doing. Now, I'm only pointing that perspective out is because a lot of the people you see in Tyler's video that are scamming aren't necessarily like dummies. They're not disabled. It's not like they can't do something smart and incredible or something with their time. But this is what they choose to do. And then when the scam is realized, they immediately feel threatened, which means they do value what they're doing so much so that they'll risk their livelihood for it, or feel as though they have to risk their livelihood for it. And so in order to kind of break you from that mindset as the viewer here, I want to provide you the option to say, hey, maybe what I'm doing could be done better, or maybe what I'm doing could be done in a more beneficial way for the people that I want to enjoy it.
Thank you. Boo? Why? You support scammers? Do you support scamming? Do you support scammers and people scamming the tourists that give your country much of money? You do, of course you do. This is why the problem's here. You catch the scammers, you have 5 women coming out of nowhere getting in the way.
After stopping the fake charity scammers, evading the suicidally empathetic locals trying to stop us, I filled up my water gun with fart juice.
Oh,
Went
no.
back to the Eiffel Tower to see if our favorite cup and ball scammers were out working. But real quick,
I'd be like, go on down the road, you fuck.
if you want to support our boots on the ground independent journalism that is not
But yeah.
bought and paid for by corporate.
Shout out Tyler. Has great coverage. It's very funny too, because he does get like right up with the confrontations and things like that. But I do want to check out a bit more information when we talking about like how Paris in general handles their I guess you can say scamming and predicament, right? And so for most of it, for me, it's more so trying to understand it to navigate it, not really understand it to, you know, participate or even take advantage of it. We really want to get down to the nitty gritty and understand how this affects artists and things like that. So I simply asked Gemini, our buddy and pal, we're always going to use this. What does the Paris government do about tourism scams in the area? And so it says the Paris government and local police authorities are aware of tourism scams and theft and have implemented measures, although some tourists report that the enforcement can be inconsistent. And we have seen that in plenty of Tyler's videos. Basically, the scammers can kind of go up to a point with the crime, right? Because there's not an actual physical threat to you. Nothing was stolen to retrieve or anything like that. Unless they're, you know, doing something to you, there's not much the police can do other than just to shoo them away for a few moments, right? And so here's what they've tried. They've tried increased police and military presence. So enhanced security measures, including the deployment of police and military, like the Operation Sentinel, are visible in public spaces, transportation hubs, and high traffic tourist locations like the Eiffel Tower and the Louvre to deter criminal activity, including pickpocketing and scams. And we recently heard of a huge heist at the Louvre recently. So there's a huge discrepancy between the value of art, the protection of art, and what is really done between the two, I guess, points of valuing art and protecting it. And so the next thing they've tried, we're giving out official warnings and advice. So the Préfecture de Police de Paris and tourist advisories from foreign governments often provide prevention advice for tourists, detailing common scams like the friendship bracelet at Montmartre the gold ring trick, petition scammers, and fake taxis, and encouraging vigilance. So fake taxis is probably the scariest thing to me amongst all of this, but you can see how a lot of the petition scammers are going to be a huge problem as well. Next on the list is reporting procedure. So tourists are advised to go to the nearest commissariat de police station, or de police, I'm sorry, which is a police station. As you can see, I don't know much of the language. To report a crime and obtain a declaration of theft for insurance claims. The emergency police number is 17, or EU-wide is 112. So I think the issue with reporting it is that you need the manpower and resources to actually do something with reporting. And I actually have something in mind that I'll probably unveil later on this channel about like actual reporting of crimes and like things like that. But the issue with this particular thing is that you're gonna have to have the actual manpower to do something about the reports. Otherwise, most people are not going to use this because it's not going to mean anything to them. The next thing is that they have a regulation of official services. So authorities regulate official services like taxis to help tourists avoid scams. The official Parisian taxis must have an illuminated rooftop sign reading Taxi Parisian and a fare meter inside. Tourists are advised to ignore direct solicitations at airports, train stations, and use official taxi ranks or trust ride sharing apps. And so, yeah, that's one of the scariest things because, you know, if you're going to an area, the idea of taxis is a long old tradition, right? Of just giving someone a ride, right? From like buggies and carriages up to Uber rides today, right? But the vigilance needed by the customers has just gotten more and more complex due to technology and like the complexity of scammers. Because even with the ride share apps, that's not even enough diligence because the Uber doesn't do a deep background check, right? So the guy could pass a little bit and you can be his first victim. So if anything, the due diligence is going to be on you getting your own personal transportation or actually knowing your driver and things like that. Other than that, trusting the public is probably the option you want to avoid if you really want to avoid any kind of like problems. But moving on, it says focusing on pickpocketing. So pickpocketing is probably one of the most direct scams. Is just straight up just taking things from people's pockets. But a significant part of law enforcement's efforts is directed towards pickpocketing in crowded areas like metro and popular attractions, as this is one of the most common crimes against visitors, right? So of course they know you're coming into town with your cute little cell phones, your backpacks, your trinkets, your jewels, and your family heirlooms, trying to take pictures and things like that. So yeah, you're going to bring all the valuables and carry them in your pockets. We're going to take them, right? And so that's probably one of the more common things they're going to focus on. So here's what it says tourists should be aware of. So the common scams, some of which we went over, it says the government's efforts are largely aimed at deterring and responding to these issues. However, specific non-violent scams like the aggressive bracelet sellers at Sacred Cure, I hope I'm saying that right, or the petitioning scams are persistent, and some reports suggest that police intervention can be infrequent or ineffective for low-level street scams. And we got a taste of that in a bit of Tyler's video where you got to see the scammers kind of just go on about their day, even though they were exposed as scammers, right? And so the next thing it says is vigilance is key. The primary advice remains for tourists to be highly vigilant, avoid engaging with strangers who approach them on the street in tourist areas, especially those trying to give or sell something or asking for a signature, and use only official services. So it asked me again if I wanted to get more information. I'm about to get into that. But before we do, the main thing I want you to take away from this is that, do you notice how the infrastructure is based on your personal actions, right? A lot of the things that are going to prevent you from being a victim of a scam is based around your vigilance, okay? So the protections that are, I guess, assumed by a lot of people aren't there. They're telling you straight up from the government's mouth, do your best to avoid these scams, and this is how. So now that you can see that at one of the, I guess you can say, I'm going to call it the pillar of fine art around the world, what does that mean about the art that's there? What does that mean about the people, the culture, the value of things and precious, beautiful people and things? What does it mean if the due diligence is based on the people, based on your own personal actions, but at the same time, treat it as we see it being treated. There's theft, there's scams, there's a level of empathy that goes beyond logic in some cases. And so, what do you think that means for the people who are going to create in France, going to create for France and with and along France, if this is how they treat their art and their valuables, right? And so it goes deep. It goes deeper beyond like, oh, the scammers are scamming. It goes, now the scammers are scamming. What have you done about it? What are you doing about it? And what is going to become of it with your efforts? And if the answers are going to be kind of what we've seen from the people, where we're okay with it as long as, you know, you don't catch me, then as a musician, if you were to ask me to invest in anything from France or Paris, I would be a little hesitant because I could see what you would do with it. So let's continue on and get back into Gemini and see. So the next question I asked it was, how effective has the government's efforts to stop scamming, and are there stats to support their efforts? So Gemini goes ahead and digs up a little bit of data, and it tells us that the effectiveness of Paris government's efforts to stop tourist scams and petty theft is a complex issue, and official statistics often paint a mixed picture. So while the government has successfully maintained a low rate of violent crime and deployed high visibility security, non-violent street crime like pickpocketing and scams remain a significant and persistent problem, right? And so that just kind of level sets us that, okay, they're doing something about it, but it's still a consistent problem, just like I mentioned earlier. So it made a bit of a chart, and we're just going to go through from the metric over to the key takeaway. And if you would like, you can pause here for the findings to kind of understand where it's getting the information from. But I generally just want you to understand the context. Okay. So pickpocketing and scams, the rate. Petty crime is highly prevalent in Paris, particularly around tourist hotspots like the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, and the Metro, right? And crime type breakdown. The priority of law enforcement tends to be on high volume thefts rather than low level non-violent street scams like the bracelet trick. So we can pause for a second right here, and if you want, continue reading. But what this crime type breakdown tells me is that even though there's a higher number and a higher amount of low level crimes, the focus is being on high volume thefts. So let's say there's a break-in at a convenience store and $3,000 was stolen. There's going to be more effort for police resources to be focused on that than there for somebody to be taking your $50 and running off with it. Even though your $50 crime is non-violent, it happens probably 10x of the convenience store robberies. The focus of police resources will still be on the convenience store robberies, just in this example, right? And so let's continue on. Violent crime rate. So government efforts are highly effective at controlling serious and violent crimes, making Paris statistically safe overall, which is a major success. So let's read again. Government efforts are highly effective at controlling serious and violent crimes, making Paris statistically safe overall. So again, all the little crimes that everybody's kind of like empathetic to and kind of turn a blind eye to, that's not the statistic that's really being affected highly. So again, all of their efforts are going towards the violent crimes, rightfully so, because we don't want people to be victims of violence, right? But there is a discrepancy when you start to use this stat to judge how safe Paris is, right? So when you think about safety, is it considered safe if I can't walk around with my cell phone in my hand recording, right? Is it safe if I can't walk around with my kids and they have backpacks on? Is it safe if I can't walk around the Eiffel Tower and just wait for a taxi, right? Now, for most people, they'll say, yeah, it's safe because of what we mentioned earlier. You will have to do your due diligence, right? But then there's another perspective of it where a lot of people feel as though if you want to call this a tourist area, then this should be deemed one of, if not the safest areas of your city to encourage people to stay, live, and work here. But if you're going to treat your tourist attractions like we mentioned earlier, like the locals tend to do in Paris, which is to treat them as traps, tourist traps, then again, as a musician here, as a young, looking to move to a new area in Europe type of citizen, why would I choose to invest in something like that? Why would that be attractive to me? And why do you think that would be attractive to me to sell to me as someplace I want to visit, enjoy, and take care of and value? You see what I'm saying? So it goes hand in hand. Like if you take care of something, I would see value in it and then want to help you take care of it as well. But if you don't take care of it, I'm not going to see value in it. So it just is what it is, right? And so let's get back to the list here. And Gemini says, tourist sentiment is one of the next effects of or reports of effectiveness. So it says here that scams continue to be a visible and recurring stain on the tourist experience despite the scrutiny, the security presence. So a lot of people, they're planning on going to France in the future, in the near future. And in their mind, they're thinking like, oh, there's going to be police there to protect me. And the police are going to tell them there's nothing I can do. And so that's the stain you have. So then when they leave Paris and they tell me about it, or if Tyler goes and makes a video about it, it's like you're going to have 1,000 videos showing you the beautiful parts of your country. But then there's this stain right there on the shirt. Just think of any piece of clothing. Like if a nice t-shirt with one stain, it makes the entire shirt different, right? So the same thing works here, okay? And so let's look at the last thing that says law enforcement efforts. Authorities are actively targeting and responding to the issue, but the sheer volume of tourist crowds makes total prevention difficult. So honestly, what would then have to happen is that you would need a rolling presence of police that actually has a direct consequence to the low level crime. But if you don't have any, true consequence other than like just de-escalation, then that's all you'll really get. So next we will go down to the conclusion of effectiveness, and this kind of just summarizes everything that we've seen so far. And it says that the high effectiveness against major crime, so that the Parisian authorities are highly effective in maintaining safety from major violent crime with a heavy invisible security presence, which means there is a limited effectiveness against petty crimes. And it says that the efforts have been less successful in eliminating the non-violent opportunistic street scams that rely on distraction and speed. And so another thing this points out too is when you think about just scams like this, the word non-violent is kind of the thing that's carrying the, I guess, the severity of the crime right now. But this can go as far as like road rage, car accidents. You can think about certain levels of assault. You can think about probably a little bit higher levels of theft where like maybe I don't take $100, but I take maybe $1,000. There's probably a certain level where like the police are just like, we can't really expend resources on this. And so knowing that as a criminal, that's probably useful information, knowing that you guys won't focus on that. And then I can just kind of just exponentially grow my low level crimes to build a lifestyle of being a criminal. Do the police know about this in Paris? Do they care? Is it something they can care about? I don't know. But again, knowing that, it kind of leads for a lot of people who aren't as serious about crime to kind of thrive. And so let's see what it says here on the last part. It says high risk areas still remain. So it says despite warnings and patrols, major tourist zones remain high risk targets for pickpocket scammers because of the concentration of distracted people. So distracted people is probably the wrong word here. Distracted is the wrong word here. I think the proper word is just, normal people, because it's not normal to walk around thinking you're going to get robbed when you're here with your family, eating dinner or something like that. But then again, distracted might be the proper word if in Paris they think it's normal to walk around thinking you're going to get robbed at dinner with your kids. So let's see. I asked it one more question. I had a few more questions, but we'll go through probably about one more question. I had what happens when somebody actually gets caught. We actually saw that and we talked about it a little bit. There's a little bit too much of the crime for them to really expend resources on it. And then it says, what is the failing portion of the judicial process that keeps scammers on the streets in Paris? And this is actually an important one, especially for musicians, because then you'll kind of understand the fight you're up against if you do get scammed or get labeled a scammer. So the failure to keep street scammers and pickpockets off the streets of Paris is not typically due to police inaction, but rather a complex set of factors within the French judicial and legal framework, often referred to as a revolving door system for petty crime. The key failing portions of the judicial process are centered around the classification of the crime, the status of the perpetrators, and systemic capacity issues. So if we stop right there and just think for a second, because it'll probably break it down further, but we got to think so we can understand what it's going to break down. So it says that the process is centered around the classification of the crime. So remember, we talked about non-violent versus violent versus serious versus major and all these cute little adjectives they add to the different crimes. At the end of the day, if somebody did anything to you, would you consider yourself a victim or not, right? And so that adds to the mass of crime. That means that, okay, a lot of people will consider themselves victims, but how do we reasonably and logically deal with the problem with a limited amount of resources? There's only certain number of cops. They need to sleep. They have their own families. We have a certain number of patrol cars, certain number of bullets, certain number of hours in the day and things like that, right? So how do we make that make sense, right? So they have to figure this out in order to make a system, right? And this is the systemic capacity issues that they're talking about, right? And then the last thing it mentions is the status of perpetrator. So it can be something like if a 13-year-old tries to scam you out of $50, can we throw him in jail for 8 years? Or if a legal immigrant decides he wants to, I don't know, drive a car without an ID, it's like, can we really chase this guy for weeks as he tries to run from us and things like that? Like how are we really going to focus our resources here? And so it creates a bit of a revolving door, because like I said earlier, lower level criminals aren't the focus, so they kind of just slide by with more victims than higher level criminals. So let's go into the first level. So the status of offenders. This is what I just mentioned. The single most cited failing point is the high number of minors involved in organized pickpocketing and scamming networks, that of which the criminals probably do use against the police. They know that because you guys voted for children to be treated a certain way by the law. They're going to use the children to be treated a certain way by the law. And so it says that to protect juvenile law, French law, like many European systems, is designed to be protective and reform oriented towards minors, generally under 18. Next, it says the difficulty of detention. For non-violent petty crimes like pickpocketing or low-level scams, it is extremely difficult for prosecutors or judges to impose immediate or prolonged detention on minors. The preference is for educational or social measures, which are often ineffective against organized transnational criminal groups. So there's a two-part problem here. I kind of see why you would want kind of like more of a social kind of aspect to the consequence of a young person committing a crime like this. And then on the other hand of it, we do have to face the reality that a lot of these transnational criminal groups are literally training young people for this. So it's different than, like, let's say a kid committing a bad decision, right? This is kind of like a kid being employed or bred to do something. So the problem changes when they're a part of a group or a gang or an organization. But the approach is still the same because of the laws that are written. So again, knowing this, the criminal groups are probably using this against the police and the government, and then winning when it comes to the small petty theft that they can get away with using minors. So quick release is another part of it. And it says police may arrest a group of pickpockets, but they are often released within hours or days due to legal protections for juveniles, allowing them to return to the streets quickly and get right back to work for who? The organized transnational criminal groups that have recruited them. So I'm sure that's pretty annoying for a police officer to arrest a kid and then be like, yes, I'm doing my job, only to see that kid back on the same block that you're protecting a week later, committing the same crime to the same citizens that you were trying to protect last week, only for those citizens to think you're useless. So again, as I said earlier, it goes above police inactivity. Police are doing their job when they can do their job and when they do their job. But what happens when their job is finished? And that's the issue that they run up to. So we got 2 more points and then we will be completely finished here talking about why Paris has all these scammers here. So lastly, it says the classification of offense. So the idea of petty crime, meaning that there's levels to crime, right? A minor charge. Most street scams and pickpocketing incidents fall under the category of petty theft or public disturbance. These are not classified as serious crimes. And then they have a focus on violence. The judicial system naturally prioritizes violent crimes, terrorism, and high value offenses. Petty theft, especially when the recovery amount is small, often gets deprioritized in court. Inconsistent penalties. The penalties for these minor offenses are often light, such as suspended sentences, small fines, or community service. For individuals in organized groups who have no fixed assets or strong ties to the community, these penalties serve as little to no deterrent. So just like we mentioned with the minors, like if you're a part of a group, like here, if you're part of the Crips or the Bloods and you get caught as a 13-year-old, there's really no punishment because you can get back out and join back in your network. And all of the other 13-year-olds went through the same process. So it's not like you're any different, right? So what this then shows you is that if you're a normal citizen in Paris, it's more likely for you to be robbed and nothing to happen to you, or no justice to come of it, than it is for you to be a part of like some huge terrorist attack or something like that, right? And so maybe you want it to be that way. We did see a bit of a peek into how the locals feel about petty theft in general. Some people just don't want to deal with it, and other people think it's good you get rid of it. And you kind of have to be pro, I guess, justice or anti-crime to kind of go looking for petty, crimes and charging it as equal to violent or, I guess, non-petty crime. I guess, what is the word here? What they call it? I don't know, just regular crime. Okay. So you're more likely to be a lady going to work to get punched in the face than you are to be like a part of some terrorist attack in Paris. And so it says the systemic overload and capacity. We spoke about this as well. The high volume of crime and constraints on the system mean arrests do not necessarily lead to swift, effective punishment. And there's a judicial backlog, which is a part of what I'm going to be unveiling sometime soon. Paris courts are overwhelmed. Prosecutors and judges simply do not have the capacity or resources to dedicate extensive time to every single case of minor tourist scamming and theft. Police disillusionment. This judicial outcome contributes to the disillusionment of police officers who report repeatedly arresting the same individuals only to see them released back into the streets, lowering the perceived impact of their efforts. So that's pretty much how Paris is going to be handling a lot of the scammer issues there. But again, if you are enjoying videos like this, make sure you hit the like button, and of course make sure you are subscribing and catching up with conversations like this, because we will be diving into more perspectives from artists, for artists, through artists. And I think a lot of this, what's going on in Paris, is dealing with the value of what they see in their own culture and their own art. So again, this is Musician Talks with Dame. If you enjoyed this, let me know in the comments, and I will see you. I'm out. Peace.